I offer piece of incense for the tribute of the Chimyo, Nicky Coles. Chimyo, wondrous wisdom, now resting in peace, the beautiful flower of Zen meditation. Leave the world of samsara behind. We are gathered here for the Nicky's tribute. And now we do the recitation of the Heart Sutra in Japanese. And the family could offer incense, powdered incense. Catherine is going to escort, guide you. And the diction member can come forward to do the offering. And if time permits, then other people can do that. But I'd like to finish accordingly. So anyway, thank you for coming. Is that okay? はい。 Thank you. はい、thank you for attending to the Buddhist ceremony part, expressing the Nicky's spiritual journey. She was very serious. She became member of Jikshowan 2012, received the Buddhist precept 2016. She was committed, very enthusiastic. She would come to the meditation session with bicycles. Even she had an accident, broken the leg or something, and still riding a bicycle come to the meditation. Even a couple of weeks before she passed away, she was on the counter, Jikshowan's Sunday meditation sessions counter doing the front desk duty. Incredible speed. I call him flower of Jikshowan. We miss her and wonderful. And I'm glad to know Nicky had a big family. Anyway, thank you very much. My part is finished. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Osha-sama, and all the people who helped to express Nicky's commitment to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. As we begin, many of us have noticed the very propitious omen of black cockatoos flying over and settling. I mean, you can't get better than that for Nicky. And this place is perfect for us to gather around her. She loved the river so much. So with her, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands, waterways, and catchments of the Yarra Birrarung, the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people, and the Bunurong people. We respect the enduring strength of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung and the Bunurong. We acknowledge the ongoing impacts of past trauma and injustices from colonial oppression, massacres and genocide committed against First Nations people. We acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded and pay respect to traditional owners who have always and continue to care for country and the Yarra Birrarung. Thank you.
Welcome. Just invite you to turn off your mobile phones or on silent. Thank you, Reverend Ikayashu. Thank you, Annie, for the welcome to country. feel a lot of open hearts in the room. So I welcome you all from my heart to continuing on to honour the life of Nicky Coles in this beautiful natural setting at Studley Grounds. My name's Genevieve Messenger and I'm a civil celebrant, and I'm honoured to be here on behalf of the family today. We mourn to the extent that we love. Nothing can take away your love for Nicky and her love for you. Yesterday, Nicky was laid to rest in a private burial at Kangaroo Ground. And as Reverend Ekai Osho just mentioned, may she be at peace. May we all be at peace. So Nicky in time will be part of the earth cycle, becoming part of course, a continuum of nature. Nicky was a meaning maker and weaved her unique kind of magic, connecting you all and connected to you all. Not unlike the roots of trees talking to each other under the earth. Now she is at peace, resting in the earth. So let us remember her in the same way she lived. Committed to her spiritual journey. With warmth. She lived her life with warmth, with humour, with intelligence, with creativity, with spirit, of course poetry, and story. We have many tributes today to bring the essence of Nicky forward, because there's none other that know her well than her family and friends. So for the first speaker today, I introduce Julie Begg, Nicky's younger sister, who will speak about her childhood growing up in Heidelberg, Melbourne. So thanks, Julie.
I've been given the task to talk about Nicky's childhood. Can everybody hear? My sister was christened Pauline Elizabeth Nicola, but was always known to us as Nicky. There were 4 of us children: Jenny, born in 1933, the oldest; Nicky, born in 1935; John in 1938, and me in 1941. The family lived first in Sydney in Taramara. My father was an up-and-coming doctor with a private practice, but moved to Melbourne in 1939 when he got a job at the Commonwealth Serum Laboratories as part of the war effort. After the attack on Sydney in Sydney Harbour and Newcastle by the Japanese in 1942, many families left the cities and went to the country. My family moved to Narberthon near Hillsville to rent a large boarding house called the Hermitage. It was built as a romantic folly for honeymoon couples, with turrets and tree houses set in magnificent temperate rainforest on the Black Spur Range, with soaring mountain ash trees and huge lush ferns. Nicky, at 5 years of age, was awestruck by the magnificence of her surroundings and never forgot those trees. Her lifelong love of the bush and the natural world must stem from that time. She was immersed in it as she walked 2 miles to school every day and back, usually trailing behind the older children because she was the youngest. In 1943, my mother bought a house in Heidelberg to be close to the Austin Hospital for my father's treatment. He had tuberculosis, which was considered an incurable disease. This had a huge impact on our lives, as he was either absent in hospital or sick in bed during our childhood. It was quite a somber childhood in some ways. First the Great Depression, then the war, and my father very ill and not expected to live. We had no extended family, aunts, uncles or cousins, so we had to make do with each other and our neighbourhood, a bit like how it was with the recent COVID epidemic. Young ones will find it hard to believe there were no mobile phones, computers or television to keep us entertained. My mother was extremely busy and either had little time for us or turned a blind eye to what we got up to. We roamed the neighbourhood, rode our ponies without supervision, climbed trees, explored far and wide, faced dangers on our own, even floating down logs on the river. But somehow we managed to survive. We learned to face our fears and become independent, intrepid and resilient. We learned also to love and respect the natural world, which was our playground, as Heidelberg was still quite rural. We all learned musical instruments, but Nicky was the only one who showed real talent, and she was conscientious and practiced. Clone Harcourt, her teacher from the state school, became a family friend and had rather unrealistic expectations of her playing. Thought she was going to be a concert flautist. And she felt she never really lived up to those expectations, and I think that led her to a lack of self-confidence and a lifelong search, both for spiritual and personal meaning in her life. It was only in the practice of Zen Buddhism in recent years that she finally found clarification and a degree of peace for herself. In their teenage years, she and John, our brother, 2 years younger, formed a close bond in their love of poetry and seeking to understand moral and ethical issues and how to make sense of growing up in a confusing world. Both of them found great pleasure in committing their favourite poems to memory and reciting them. In 1949, well after the war, we went away on our first ever camping holiday on the Gippsland Lakes. My father was now cured with drugs that had been developed during the war, even though he only had half a lung after several operations of lungs that had become infected with the TB. and Meetan became our yearly holiday destination. One year, our parents waved us off to sail from Meetan to Painesville by ourselves in small sailing dinghies, which meant battling the fickle winds and tides and camping for 2 nights out. It was a huge adventure. Jenny, the oldest at 16, was put in charge. Our parents waved us off and trusted us somehow to manage ourselves, quoting Arthur Ransom's iconic phrase, "Better drowned than duffers, if not duffers won't drown." That was the attitude of our parents, and whether you call it trust or neglect, it is in stark contrast to parental attitudes of today. There were no mobile phones in those days, so you just had to trust to luck that nothing bad would happen. Nicky never enjoyed playing the flute, but loved reciting poetry. Around the campfire during those camping holidays, she, John, I think, and Jenny often recited poetry and ballads, which they had learned by heart. And we lapped it up, well, I did, because I wasn't doing the quoting. Books opened up the world for us, and holidays were the time to read them. We all loved reading and treasured our books, a gift my father gave to us during his long illness and convalescence, as he read aloud those authors he loved himself. We were introduced to Milton, Shakespeare, Gulliver's Travels, Greek myths, Scott of the Antarctic, and the King James Version of the Bible. It enriched our lives in ways that were quite different from other families we knew who played sport for entertainment or went to the cinema. Nicky and all of us had a keen sense of being a bit odd as a family. Over the years, Nicky tried her hand at writing poetry, as I did. Recently, she and I spent a lot of time workshopping them together. It was a very special time of sharing, as our poems reflected a lifetime of our experiences, both frivolous and profound. To finish, I'd like to read one of her poems now. Untitled. Out walking one morning, my friend picked a sprig of sweet pea and offered it to me. A minimal spray of 3 white flowers, fragile, already wilting, but the scent blew me away. They call it sweet, but it is more subtle, with an almost astringent aftertaste that lingers in the spirit. I brought it home, too late to revive in water. Next day, I hold it to my nose, these 3 small blooms on fragile stems, wrinkled, crinkled, now 5 sepals curled. And I thank my friend and the universe for such fragile beauty and such joy. Nicky, I'll miss you.
Thanks, Julie. We will now be hearing next from Nicky's children, Ben, Sabina, Emily and Cheska.
That was a lovely tribute, Julie. Makes makes me realise that you, John and Jenny, have known Nicky for so much longer than I have, really. It feels like I've known her a long time, all my life in fact. And I'm just amazed at how many people have come today. I think it just shows how Nicky went through life very much noticed. And that's a tribute in itself. Pauline, Nicola, Nicky, Mum. There's so much to say about Mum that it seems impossible to say anything at all. She was a constant in an unstable childhood. Growing up as we did, as diplomatic kids, flitting between Australia, Rome, Dublin, London and Geneva. Soon after marrying Dad, they were off to Rome, where Bina and I were born. No doubt both of them unprepared for their diplomatic life and parenthood. Mum took motherhood seriously, but often felt like she let her kids down and fell short, sometimes sinking into guilt. Yes, she no doubt made her share of mistakes, but I'm here to tell you that, for me, Mum did not fall short. Both Gervais, our dad, and Mum, in their different ways, made sure we had some incredible experiences growing up. Summer holidays in the Alps, learning to ski at the age of 7, boating on the River Shannon in Ireland, exploring countless Romanesque churches in France. Okay, that was more Dad. And even being thrown into a summer camp near Chamonix with a bunch of French kids so I could learn French the hard way. Back in Australia, where she was much more at home, there were more adventures, often with cousins, skiing, sailing, beach holidays, week-long bushwalks in the Snowy Mountains, and horse riding, to mention just a few. Then there was the adventure of bringing 2 new people into the world, Emily and Cheska. It should already be clear that Mum had an adventurous spirit. After university, she took off to Europe with her friend Kate Boyce. There was India, the old country, and she even worked in a kibbutz. Mum had a habit of making friends for life. She nurtured those friendships. She would not hesitate to strike up a conversation with a complete stranger and ask them awkward questions. Not a few of those strangers have become her friends. She didn't think twice about walking past a private property keep out sign, or, on one memorable occasion, shirt front at red-faced Bob Hawke at a fancy reception with a letter by my teenage sister Sabina, decrying Labour's unwillingness to protect the Franklin. I think the Jews, they call that chutzpah. Mum was a lover of the Australian bush and a lover of trees, so it made perfect sense when she partnered with Ken Eldridge, who was a eucalypt expert. His expertise in exotic plantation species, however, was perhaps not slightly less of interest to Nicky. Together they explored Australia from top to bottom and east to west, and even up to East Timor. They shared a strong love of this country and commitment to the rights of first Australians. Mum was always a seeker of the truth. She was an intellectual with an appreciation of culture, poetry, literature, music, and social justice. All things she shared with Dad. But she was also, and perhaps more importantly, a seeker of spiritual truth. There were interesting diversions into Catholicism, home church, circle dancing, Findhorn, Elm Grove, Reiki, and finally an abiding home in Buddhism. There were never any easy shortcuts on her spiritual journey, and always more questions than answers. In the end, it was the journey and above all the practice that mattered to Mum. For an avowed introvert, Mum loved people. She loved her kids, her grandkids, her great-granddaughter, her extended family, and all of you here, dear friends, all her dear friends. Wonderful little Pendas Park opposite her house in Thornbury was the perfect venue for Mum. She could strike up an unsolicited conversation, perhaps from an improbable Tai Chi position, with a neighbour who quickly became a friend. Some of you are here today. Mum's life came to a fitting conclusion in this last week. She glowed with courage, peace and joy. Surrounded by family and friends as she lay on her hospital bed taking calls from those who could not be there, entertaining us with poetry and cheerful banter. One moment she lit up the room with life and love, and the next she was gone. In keeping with Mum's spirit, the time following her death has not been a sad abyss, but a hopeful opportunity to look at old photos, to remember half-forgotten vignettes of her complex and rich life, and as it was her most ardent wish, to restore neglected relationships. Thank you, Mum.
So I wanted to start by saying that my siblings and other people have given quite spicy tributes, peppered with anecdotes. But anyway, here goes my tribute. I appreciate so much of what Mum Nicky gave to me. She brought me into this world and gave me a warm, comfortable home. We had enough to live an ordinary, balanced life. Not too much, not too little, and I've always appreciated that. Our life was never excessive, despite Dad having worked in DFAT and having lived in Europe and travelled. From her father, my papa, who was a doctor, Nicky inherited a deep knowledge of health which she passed on to me. She loved craft, writing, reading, prayer, meditation and music. While my own interests have taken a different path, it was she who first inspired me to explore creativity and learning. She often said she wished she could sing like her favourite opera singers, Dame Joan Sutherland, Kiri Te Kanawa, and others. I may not share her exact musical taste, but I do love singing, sometimes humbly in the parish choir, sometimes with karaoke, and I thank her for planting that seed. Nicky had a rich spiritual life. Early in life she followed the Christian and Catholic faiths, and in more recent years she embraced Buddhism. Just to say, I follow Jesus Christ, yet I deeply value the wisdom she found in her Buddhist practice. She was also a chef extraordinaire. I'll never forget the freshly baked soda bread she made in Ireland, her delicious vegetarian dishes, stewed rhubarb and apple for breakfast, festive Christmas feasts, and even her homemade ice cream. We shared so many outings together, museums, galleries, plays, concerts, and she passed on her love of the outdoors and exercise. From walking and jogging to biking, Tai Chi, yoga and swimming, our adventures took us to many countries and gave me a love of movement and nature. Nicky was tidy, organised, and had diligent qualities that have served me well in life. She kept up with personal admin, journaled regularly, and approached shopping with minimalism, choosing only what was necessary. She practiced self-care, valued health, and stood up for her beliefs as a human rights activist and eco-warrior. She was sociable, disciplined, appreciative of the arts, deeply spiritual, and a great role model in many ways. Yeah. As some of you may know, my life hasn't always been easy, but as my dad Gervais and my uncle John and others have said, it's important to take responsibility for your life. Hilary and Anne also helped me a lot, and many others, family and friends. I've done my best to make lemonade out of lemons, and in doing so, I carry forward the gifts both my parents gave me. I wish to thank all those here who have helped me on the journey of recovery from mental health issues or PTSD. I can't name everyone. You know who you are. But of course, today I honour Mum Nicky for her love, her example, and the many ways she shaped the person I am. And also take a moment to remember my dad, who gave to me in his own way, and to say hi to all those who helped me rise like a phoenix out of the ashes. Thanks, Mum.
So like Ben, we sisters find ourselves at a loss to know how to write about 9 fully lived decades. And but in a childhood of constant change, he was our holster. So I'm reading this on behalf of Jessica too. Here we go. To change the script. Yeah. So Jessica and I put together some impressions from our years with her, in no particular order. Mum was water-wise, saving kitchen sink water in a special washing up bowl and heating it like a cold soup with scum. Mum was frugal with resources, using every tea bag twice. She was a mender, darning socks and jumpers with careful crosshatch stitches. She was also a maker, knitting dense and sturdy jumpers for her grandchildren, much appreciated, but sadly rarely worn. Many years earlier, she had a DIY phase where she made a solid wooden letterbox that perched for many years at the top of our Battle Axe Drive. Mum was an ardent recycler, bringing odd bits of wrapping paper and old quarterlies with her when she visited to make sure that nothing was tossed away before every possible use had been extracted.
She was unapologetically whole meal. Years of school lunch sandwiches made with whole grain, nuts and bolts bread, Vegemite and walnuts. The Wilsons remember that. She was sun smart, fastidious about hats and sunscreen, long before sun and cancer were a thing. She was also not averse to the occasional bit of skinny dipping, much to our embarrassment. Nicky was a voracious reader, sometimes reading a book a day. She loved the Darabin libraries and was not shy about requesting new titles she thought would add to the enlightenment of the inner north. She was a bike riding granny, rocking up to dialysis on her two-wheeled steed, scornfully dismissive when we suggested a mobility scooter might be more appropriate. Mum maintained things meticulously, like her old Subaru station wagon, which she bought with Ken and refused to replace, which aged with her.
She loved her Penders Park community, centred around people: Mario, Clinton, David, Jodie, Ellie, dogs, Harper, Yui, Pippin, Mary, amenities. Mum was a tree hugger and a tree lover, featured in the Herald Sun under the heading Protester 84 in desperate bid to save beloved park trees. In a tussle for the ages between Mum refusing to exit the fall zone, her partner in crime Mario, and the council, no guesses as to who won. She had great admiration for her friend Susan, who continues to fight for our urban habitat one venerable hollowed tree at a time. Nicky believed in doing and being a change. For example, she chose to travel between Melbourne and Canberra by train to savour the journey and save on carbon emissions, and she always met someone interesting on the way. Nicky had game. Her landlord could never convince her to take down the cornflakes tied prominently to the front fence. And in her filing cabinet, we found there were rows of neatly labelled files with titles like treaty, sovereignty, spirituality, environment, mining issues, hot current issues, East Timor, Palestine, special people, and palliative care. Other people will talk more about Mum's activism, but I will say that when Nicky took up an issue, she stayed the course. She did her best to contribute meaningfully to the process of reconciliation and social justice through years of involvement with the Aboriginal Tendency and groups like the Concerned Australians.
Mum was disciplined and a lover of routine, keeping a diary over 50 years. In one neat column she jotted down the events of the day, while in the main body she analysed and sometimes agonised, attempting to make sense of it all. She loved a good conversation, tackling the existential threat of climate change in regular coffee mornings with two friends she called the elderly gentlemen. Mum was a networker. She loved nothing more than making new friends, bringing people together, and was delighted when those friends became friends too. She also went to great lengths to nurture old friendships. The four high school friends, Nicky, Kate, Giffy and Brenda, continued to meet up until Kate's death not so long ago. Despite her failing body, Mum never truly seemed old, remaining active and curious until the end. It's all too interesting, she would say, when deferring her decision to die. We knew too that she hung around for the people she loved. She had serial house guests, some staying for months at a time and becoming lasting friends. Cohabitation could cause some internal conflict, though, as she wrestled between her instincts for generosity and the need for chores to be done, just so.
Mum was not a city slicker. She delighted in time spent close to nature and knew the proper names of birds, trees and flowers. Nicky struggled with depression at times and could be hard on herself. She carried a lot of guilt about her parenting. But she was a spiritual seeker, and like all of us, I think she was looking for a way out of the struggle. She wanted to break the patterns of the past and model a better way forward for us. As she got older, I think she did.
It turns out that Nicky also did death quite well too. She lived up to her words in her article, The Practice of Dying, in her Zen magazine. I hope I can approach the ending in a realistic spirit, ready for anything, open to everything. Travel well, Mum. We hope death was a relief in the end, but we will deeply miss you.
As we finish, we'd also like to share that Nicky recently gave her youngest grandsons, Remy and Rollo, a keffiyeh, Palestinian keffiyeh scarf each. She brought one home from her Middle Eastern travels as a young woman. When, as Ben mentioned, she also volunteered on the kibbutz. Nicky was devastated to witness what is happening in Gaza today, and carrying forward her courage in the face of injustice, let us raise our voices to demand an immediate end to this unimaginable tragedy.
I now would So Remy is Nicky's grandson, and he's going to read a poem that Nicky wrote in 2024 called The Last Voyage.
Thank you everyone for speaking, they were all very lovely. This poem is called The Last Voyage. I am a leaky dinghy on a wide sea, and I am the rower, pulling on the oars, raising my arms to use whole body strength to draw them through the water. Breathing in strongly to fuel my effort, then turning wrists to feather the blades. Leaning aft to complete a circular movement on the out-breath, ready to pull again. This is the rhythm of my final voyage as I move towards some unknown shore. Out of sight beyond my toiling back, sighting marks astern in an act of faith to maintain the course, blind to the way ahead. How long can this continue? Will my failing strength hold out? Where is the shore and what awaits me there? Slowly my dinghy moves on the swell as watery sounds against the hull gurgle and pause. And I hope that even if I cease to pull, all strength gone, this little boat may reach some unknown shore, washed up by tide and wind and wave, making land fall.
Thank you, Remy. And I now invite Annie Belifo to share with us. Thank you, Remy.
Thanks, everyone. And for me, especially wonderful to hear the kids who I met when they were just so young. And just such beautiful tributes. Thank you. I had a wonderful dream last night. I dreamt that I found a gorgeous little apartment in the National Library. And I moved in there. That's something I would have told Nicky, and an amazing conversation would have eventuated. Nicky and I have gone along together for nearly 50 years. It's hard to fathom how it is that I can't knock on her door and find her propped up on her cane sofa. Can we even call it a sofa? That minimal seat she occupied for so many years. I met Nicky in Canberra when I was 25 years old. I'd come to Australia on my own. I knew no one. I was an illegal migrant. Nicky was older, also a teacher in the Woden Migrant English program, a mother of 4, and what was then known as a diplomatic wife, which entailed uprooting your kids, finding new schools, going overseas, taking care of your husband's wine collection, and also being able to cook really good meals. She lived in Duffy, that's a suburb in Canberra, close by where I lived, at Mount Stromlo Observatory. She made me welcome, cherished me, called me her wise woman of the mountain. Nicky and I were both trying to understand the human world and what it had thrown at us. We pondered this story. Ananda, a disciple of the Buddha, asked the Buddha, "What is the holy life?" The Buddha replied, "Good companionship." His disciple persisted, "What else?" "Nothing else, only good companionship." Through practice with Jikisho and later in her life, Nicky came to deeply of Buddhism. We're given Buddhist names not as a fait accompli, but as something to grow into. So with her name, Chimyo, wondrous wisdom. Nicky was an engaged Buddhist. She felt great pain at the impact of climate change and was at protest at Jed Kearney MP's office 2 months ago. Shortly before she died, I said, how wonderful it is, Nicky, that you're fine with all your people. And she said, yes, but I am not fine with climate change because of its terrible impact on so many people and the suffering that results. She never came to terms with the fact that our Buddhist Sangha took little or no interest in this reality. Nicky loved the bush, as everyone said, and we buried her there yesterday, 100% perfect. And then the rain came down on her grave. Beautiful. She loved the bush so much. And over these days, an adventure I had with Nicky many years ago when you two were young teenagers has just kept coming to mind. We were to go on a bushwalk in Kosciuszko National Park in the Snowy Mountains. In their family, Nicky's older sister Jenny and family always led expeditions. But Nicky had bought a compass and decided that our little party would enter the park at one spot, walk for 4 days, and meet up with Jenny at a spot on the other side. She'd practiced for weeks around Duffy, and she used a term that she and I had invented. Girls will prevail. Anyway, off we went. There were months of doubt, crossed this, I remember, beautiful, ice-cold, crystal-clear stream, dried our feet, put our socks and boots back on, and then, no, we were going the wrong way. We had to recross. But every morning at breakfast, she went out, checked the compass, and led us off. And after 4 days, we arrived, and there were Jenny and family. I think of Nicky now as having charted a unique course through her life, especially in her later years. She would ride her bike because she loved it. She felt free. And she would drive at dawn from Walkerville to Wonthaggi, nearly 2 hours, for dialysis, so that she could be in the bush. She'd be early at Chicky Shawan every Sunday to get on the front desk welcoming people. Nicky was my biggest supporter for nearly 50 years of my writing, my artwork and exhibitions, my follies. To her, a folly was something not strictly necessary. You only could take one on a bushwalk because it made you tag together. Anyway, this accounts for me making a folly for this occasion, because I think she'd like it. It says, lovely climate, expensive, unprotected. Didn't turn out quite how I wanted it to, but I thought I went it anyway. She would have got behind you in similar ways. What can we do now? I think she'd love us to get behind each other and behind young people with their special potential and interesting directions. To her, this was love. And because she knew the King James Bible, I'm going to read. If I speak with the tongues of the human world and of angels, but have not love, I am become sounding brass and a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and know all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so I can move mountains but have not love, I am nothing. Love, the Bible goes on, has huge capacities for kindness, to want the best for others, to bear difficulty and endure, to put aside self-interest, not to focus on evil, to celebrate truth. Love wins out over knowledge and intellect. And I believe this was Jiki Sharon's biggest gift to Nicky, that she finally understood that point. In Buddhism, love is simply an acceptance of reality. Flowers fall, even though we love them.
Thank you, Annie. I now invite Marina. Thank you, Marina.
Sleeves up.
It was such a joy to listen to those tributes. Thank you. Nicky and I met at a spiritual retreat by the Malongo River when I was 22 and she was 44. I opened the cabin door and was face to face with Nicky in the top bunk. And we were there and then to begin a conversation and friendship which has lasted over 45 years. Early on, I was lucky to share Nicky's home with her at different times as a young public servant, and was happy to get to know her children, Ben, Anne and Jessica. A visit to the family in Geneva, mid-80s, was followed by Nicky and I travelling through Switzerland and Italy, camping and soaking up culture. Nicky, significantly for me, introduced me to Ed and Laurel of Elm Grove, a place of sanctuary for us both. Our visit with Ed to the Boral Ring in the Snowy Mountains and the fact that Neil and I were married there, with Nicky and Ken among the guests, is among my treasured memories. More recently, we wove time together, as we could at her Canberra and Melbourne abodes and at our Otways home, including once with her dear Ken. As I suspect with all here who knew and loved Nicky, we had innumerable great waves, early on about the public service, about relationship, personal growth, and always about the state of the world. Sure, we had some feisty differences of opinion on occasion. Nicky, inevitably authentic and honest, but always engaging in order to come together in mutual understanding. Nicky's curiosity about other people in life, what moves, motivates and inspires people, was perennial, as was her questing to know its meaning for herself, a deep inquiry indeed. I was moved to see in those last weeks that her curiosity, her keen intelligence and love of a good rave, so alive in her, despite increasing pain and depletion of energy. And perhaps Nicky's most constant characteristic, as I saw it over the decades, was her great love for and interest in her family and friends, especially her beloved children and grandchildren. Even on this sad day of farewell, it's a privilege to be in a room full of people who share love for this remarkable, bright, complex, deeply loving and super smart woman who always sought the good, including the common good, and who also loved a good laugh. Gosh, over the years, the causes Nicky has been involved with, it's already been alluded to. Early on, we campaigned against a weir for a local river, and Nicky evolved a saying which we often had recourse to and laughed over: the people united sometimes win and sometimes lose. She threw her concern behind causes from local elections to multiple environment issues, war in Gaza, the Taliban's war on Afghani women, to Indigenous rights treaty and the war for truth. She once sent around a petition to honour murdered Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. And she said, despite my ignorance, she said, and remoteness from him. I recall her
council campaign against chopping down the little copse of trees on her park corner. The point is, remote or far, she paid attention to justice issues, to life. She cared. I loved her passionate yet also diffident at times nature, her courtesy for your difference, her diligence in digging deep to understand people and circumstances. And like the little prince, she held to her questions. I think Emily mentioned that earlier, until she had a satisfactory answer. So it was a joy for me to see that deep spiritual and personal question find what has seemed to me a profound peace-giving answer to her life question in her Zen Buddhism practice and her community, her Sangha. And of course, Nicky loved language, literature, and especially poetry, which has already been mentioned, and that beautiful poem read by Remy. Her recitations by heart were amazing. Some lines in one of her own poems says, "Do not waste this rare and precious opportunity. Sit still and soak up space and silence. Unrepeatable moments to savour with each breath before returning to the world where things need doing." Something Mary Oliver, who Nicky also liked, once wrote applies, I feel, to Nicky. "My work is loving the world." I think Nicky took that word to heart.
Thank you so much, Marina. Our next tribute is from Pat Long, who met Nicky 14 years ago in Melbourne at an Earth Song workshop. Earth Song emphasises the sacredness of all creation and the interconnectedness of humanity and nature, obviously a big running theme in Nicky's life. Thank you, Pat.
I feel like a total latecomer into Nicky's life. It was not until 2011 that I first met her when she'd come to Melbourne after being in Canberra. And I was leading a workshop at Ceres Environment Park in Brunswick at the time, and it was entitled Celebrating Our Interconnectedness in the Community of Life. And this piqued her interest. And so she became a great part of the Earth Song project, of which I was coordinating. We've heard so much about all her gifts, and everything I'm going to say has been said before, so I'll try and say it in a slightly different way without repeating too much. Nicky's capacity for engaging with matters of substance and meaning-making come as no surprise from everything we've heard today. She eagerly accepted an invitation to be part of the pilot program Exploring Ecological Identity, along with a monthly reading circle organised by the Earth Song project. Each of these offered a place where people felt safe and confident to question, to look for possible answers, for ways to respond to the challenges threatening Earth's life systems. So this is a theme in Nicky's life which we've been commenting on. But these experiences created a special bond between Nicky and I. They framed our friendship, which continued beyond the life of that Earth Song project, until our final conversation at the Austin Hospital, the day before she confirmed her decision to stop dialysis. Many of you have spoken about how she engaged. And as I entered the dialysis unit on that day, she greeted me in a way that's already been expressed. Her face alive, her eyes washed with delight, her purple mittened hands stretched wide, her open mind and open heart fully present. Nicky, in the flow of the moment, living, engaging, deciding, communing to the end. Over the years, our friendship was in her home, in cafes, and she rode her bike always to the cafes. More recently, over the phone. And conversations over those years deepened and extended with that same theme that everyone has been mentioning, and isn't that a tribute to the consistency of the journey? The knowledge that she was always seeking was embodied in her activism and her advocacy, which was, as we have known, intrinsic to her identity. I've already heard the story about her going to Jed Carney's office every Friday morning, and for months and months, to just alert people to the lack of action on climate change by the then Labor government, with our Labor government in its next term. Very recently, she was at Camp Sovereignty in Kingston, Maine, as the Rook Walk for Truth arrived in the heart of Naarm in Melbourne, completing a vital stage in the process of treaty. All of us who had walked that final leg into the city were welcomed into the smoking circle on that sacred Indigenous land. And sitting on a tree stump, waiting for the walkers to arrive, was Nicky. I hadn't noticed her at first against the crowd. But as the smoke moved and wafted, and as people moved within it to be cleansed and welcomed, there she was, gliding almost through the haze, as much spirit, it seemed, as she was flesh. Later, at the end, I commented on her courage and the inspiration of her action. She simply replied, "This is very important." A woman such as Nicky, and a life lived in a way as hers, compels us to ask what it is that makes such a woman, such a life possible. Part of the answer lies in all the things we've heard today, in her capacity to include and connect so many people in her orbit, the breadth of her experience, the depth of it, and surely her honesty about past mistakes and gaps in awareness, and her careful work in trying to put those things right. All of that is part of the mix. So too, her committed Zen practice that enabled her to remain steady and true as the process unfolded. That same practice grounded her activism as well. But underpinning that, as has just been mentioned, I suspect it was her imperative to love. Love of people, of her people, and always her love of earth. The day after the smoking ceremony, a final report of the Yuruk Truth Commission was taken in procession from Kingston Maine to Parliament House. Wave after wave of supporters accompanied and celebrated its arrival and official handing over. And somewhere in that crowd was Nicky. She was there, fragile, determined, loving. Of course she was there.
Thank you, Pat. So in a moment we're going to hear from Cass, a more recent friend of Nicky's, who was introduced to the family by Nicky's. Oh, no, we're not. We're going to hear from Cass. Are we going to?
Oh, maybe. Oh, maybe we can.
Why not? We have two more speakers today. And Cass, you're an important part of this, so welcome. Yeah.
I'm new in Nicky's life. I first met Nicky in Canberra in 2007 when she was introduced to me by a late friend, Terry Rogers. When I got introduced to Nicky, little did I realize that she was going to be an intergenerational gift to me, because shortly after being introduced to Nicky, Nicky introduced me to Ben and John and the boys, Chris and Greg, and then later on to her other kids and extended families. And I've since become friends with Nicky's extended family. So I'm mindful that I've not known Nicky as many of you gathered here today, most especially her family. And I'm grateful that I've got the opportunity to say something about Nicky, a true friend that I had for close to 20 years. When Ben asked if I could speak at Nicky's memorial today, I thought of what I was going to say, and I thought maybe I'll write her a poem, because in her last days when I visited her in the hospital, we bonded over poems. She was reading poems to me, but too much pressure, I'm like, I'll do something probably poetic, but not really a poem. So, Nicky, the friend and friendship that keeps giving. Through my relationship with Nicky, I've been blessed with many friends through her family, and though Nicky is gone, I continue to have those friends through those family members, a gift that she's passed on to me and that I'll continue to value for the rest of my life. Nicky, a woman of the people. As most of the speakers have acknowledged before, Nicky loved people, and she understood that her identity and humanity was defined in the context of people, friends, family, and the community. I believe Nicky's life reflected the African philosophy of Ubuntu, which says, I am because we are. Whenever I visited Nicky, she either had someone at home, or she would tell me she had just come back from, visiting someone. She always had people around. And if I called, sometimes I'll call her, and she'll go, hey, Cass, I'll call you back in 5 minutes. I've just got some people visiting, And she'll call back, or ask me to call back in 5 minutes, or she'll tell me, oh, Remy was here, has been staying. There's always someone at home, or this person just left. So she always had people with her, and she was always thinking of who next she was going to be hanging out with. Or she would tell me about coming back from attending a rally for a just cause. So there was always something Nicky was going, and we'll speak for about an hour. She would tell me about all the things that she's been doing, trying to make the world a better place. And I think evidence of Nicky being a person, a woman of the people, was very clear when she was at the hospital on her last days. I remember my wife and I were visited 2 days before she passed away, and Ben and Quentin were telling us about the number of visitors that had that day. There's a lot of people, some are traveling from Sydney, and all the calls. I'm like, oh, Nicky, man, you're so important. And how humble Nicky was. She was so dismissive. Come on, guys. I've lived here for about more than 8 years, so I get to know a lot of people. And I was like, hang on, Nicky. Not many people who've lived into their 80s know so many people, have so many people visit them in the hospital. You invested in those people, they loved you, and that's why they came to see you. And in her gentle way, she was like, oh yeah. I'm just like, I know you're dismissive, but you're loved, and we care about you, those people care about you. That's why we came. Nicky, a woman of hope and resilience. Everyone has spoken about Nicky, how resilient she is. I think she's the definition of resilience. Who rides her bike to places in the late 80s? Of course, Nicky does, and she did. As a woman of hope, Nicky showed us that death wasn't the final word. when we visited Nicky, she talked about death and dying with joy, with happiness. And there was something very special spending those last, spending time with Nicky during her last days. I realized that death is not the thing. Listening to Nicky, what the sense I had was, death is something that, you know, we shouldn't be scared of when our time comes and we are ready. And the reason Nicky was ready was because Nicky knew deep down that she had played her role here on earth, made a difference in people's lives, and also made a difference in the world by her ongoing care and love for people and the environment. She shared a lot of Shakespearean poems on dying and death, and we listened, I actually recorded one of those poems, which I've listened to a few times because it was just a very special moment to me. And it was just, it was just a reminder of the hope that Nicky embodied, which is something I took with me from that last visit. So there's a lot of people I've said here, but as we gather here today to celebrate the inspirational life of an amazing human being, we say thank you, Nicky, for enriching our lives and making the world a better place. May we all be inspired by your life and aim to become better human beings and make the world a better place, just as you did. Thank you, Nicky.
So our final reader for today, and then we'll have a photo presentation and final words. But Nicky's older sister Jenny, I invite you now to read a poem, When We Came Home, by Keith Harrison, who has known Nicky for over 70 years. Keith Harrison couldn't be here today, but wanted this poem to be read as a tribute to his dear friend. So I welcome Nicky's older sister, Jenny.
I'm here to speak for Keith Harrison. Can you hear me? I'm here to speak for Keith Harrison, the poet, and a great friend, who very sadly couldn't be with us today. But he did want to share this poem as a tribute to Nicky, with whom he had such a nourishing friendship, and so many rich conversations about poetry, and much else, over a period of more than 70 years. This is meant for all of us, but especially at this time for Nicky. It's called When We Come Home, and it's the title poem of a collection which will appear in Melbourne later in the year. Closer. Close.
Yes.
Tell me the slogan. Can you hear it now?
Yes.
Good. When we come home, when we come home to the good place in ourselves, there's a brown music like the hum of bees, and then the speech of our hands is delicate and short. We touch our children, our mothers and fathers, our aging mothers and fathers. This greeting, this farewell, the cantor's fearless on which our smaller songs depend. We stand here in the courtyard in winter sunlight, carried a moment beyond the edge of speech, carried to a place where sound rises in quiet columns. Clumps of palace push up from the ground, like the heads of giants, our witnesses, the Greek Serenus, and the green bones of our children.
your presence here today, and thank you for everyone who spoke so beautifully today. May you remember that neither time nor circumstance can take away Nicky's love for you or your love for Nicky. There's nothing that can touch the innermost workings of your heart and the memories of Nicky that reside there. So obviously the photo presentation is going to continue running. You can keep it running. It's going to continue running, so you can just take your time and watch it. And we're going to have refreshments now, and you're all welcome to stay and continue to share your stories about Nicky. So thank you all, and have a lovely, lovely afternoon. Thank you.